so try to get your head around that, which is that every time we hear, we're really hearing that rhythm just really, really fast. And that's kind of amazing to think about because really our hearing has two levels of perception, which is we can distinguish individual events, and that's really what rhythm is. If you think of, you're hearing that as a rhythm, right? But if I play this, you're also, your mind is realizing that they're related in the same way, 3 to 2, because we're able to hear that that's a perfect fifth. But you're doing it incredibly fast, and that's because it's a different way of hearing. You're not distinguishing you're not distinguishing individual events, but you're distinguishing relationships between frequencies, which is also what you're doing when you're doing this, just much slower. Let's see, I can give you 4 to 5 too. So that's the same as this. And let's see if I can do 6 to 5. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1. Okay, and then the 5. And that's this. That's the same thing. What I just snapped is exactly the same as that. Or is this, because it's not about which note we start from, it's about the relationship between the two notes, between the two frequencies, right? So all these are minor thirds. And they're all okay. So how else can we see this? How else can we see this? I just showed it to you in this kind of like bar graph kind of way, but I wanted to go a little further, and I discovered that in the 19th century, people made these little machines that were like on a table, and they had two pendulums on either side of the table. So one was going this way, and one was going this way. Okay, and here's the table. And you put weights on the bottom of each pendulum. And then the top of it was connected with a rod to a pencil. And the pencil will be here drawing a drawing on a piece of paper that's on the table. And by adjusting where the weights are on each one of the pendulums, you could basically draw a diagram of the relationship between two frequencies. Okay? And so you get this very beautiful picture that would represent how those two frequencies are related. And I thought, okay, I would love to build one of those, but that sounds like too much work. So I'm going to write a computer program to do it. So let's see. stride, right? So let's see what that sounds like. Let me just try it. Isn't that pretty? Yeah, thank you. My favorite feature of this is I made it so you can follow along with that little guy who's traveling around. Now we're inside it. And now, let's just say we start with these whole number ratios. Right? We have this very clean 5 to 6 to 7. Let's say that we just detune it. We just change the tuning of it. Can you hear it slowly going out of tune? And you can see it going out of tune. Hear the beating happening? So this is interesting because it connects us to the history of tuning systems, which is that people discovered just intonation a very long time ago, but then they realized you can't really modulate if you tune things in just intonation. Modulate means play in a different key. You start with one key, then you want to play in a different key. You can't actually do that if things are in just intonation. And that's why a piano is not tuned in just intonation. It's not tuned with these whole number ratios. It's right in between. It evens out the octave. And I don't have enough time to get into that. But so what you're hearing now, you hear that beating? That's actually that's the way pianos are tuned. It's kind of sad, but if you listen to this, do you hear the kind of very fast wobble in it? That's because this is tuned in equal temperament and not just intonation. When a string quartet plays a major third, if they're really good, they'll naturally tune to just intonation because that's what feels good to us. And they'll be in these whole number ratios of 4 to 5, and there's no beating, there's no wobble. It's just like, okay. So I have, so that's one thing. Let's skip ahead like 2,000 years to the 15th, 16th centuries. People like Palestrina, and even before Palestrina, these composers, I like to think of it as, if you're a really talented musician, you can just kind of feel that things go together, and you can maybe write a lot of compositions just entirely intuitively, right? Just on the basis of this sounds good, this feels good. You could do that. But say you want to teach somebody, and say you have like 20 students, and you're being paid to teach them, and you need for them to develop some level of competence, and they're not all that talented. You're going to have to find some kind of rule to define what works and what doesn't, so that even a monkey can do it, right? And that's what these people did very slowly over time throughout those 2,000 years, or especially, I guess, from the medieval time into the Renaissance, is they codified rules for how, for which pitches sound good together. And in particular, they're talking about intervals. So they're saying, consonant intervals, such as an octave, a third, minor third, a fifth, a sixth, a minor sixth. Those are all consonant. We can just sit on those. But if we have a dissonant interval, for example, a major seventh, then we better resolve that. Or if we have a tritone, which was just completely unallowed for a long time, we gotta resolve that too. Okay? So things like that, rules of counterpoint. Really the only real rule of counterpoint is that you're not allowed to move in direct motion into a perfect consonance. What that means is fifth and octaves, both voices can't move in the same direction into them. They have to move in contrary motion. So this is okay, but this is not okay, according to the rules of counterpoint. And I know that sounds incredibly basic, but it leads to all of Western music, basically. It's really incredible what that very tiny little rule has led to. So one of the things I did a few years ago is I went back really seriously into studying counterpoint. And I was studying with a teacher in Manhattan, and it was great. And I was thinking, okay, these are such solid, hard and fast rules. Maybe I can teach my computer to do that, right? So I started writing programs that do counterpoint. Let's see how this sounds. So I'm going to make it, we'll go in Dorian, and then we'll say first species. Okay, well, that's not ideal, but I think we're going to have to do this in a different way. Hold on. All right, now you can see everything going on. All right, there you go. Okay, so what's going on here? This is a standard counterpoint exercise. I gave the computer the bottom line. That's one of these cantus firmi. Go along with it. Okay, so what did it come up with this time? Let's see. I'll sing it. Sounds like music, right? There's no intelligence here. All I did was give the computer a whole bunch of rules. So let's see, what's this one? In second species, if we're on note following passing note, check for 3-note scale. I won't bore you with the details. First note of bar should not form the same interval with cantus as first note of last bar if interval is perfect, i.e. no parallel fifths or octaves at a larger scale. Okay, all these rules. These are rules that my teacher gave me. It's not like made for the computer. This is how students have been taught counterpoint, probably from, since the 17th century. And all I'm doing is telling the computer to do it. But let's try one more. What mode should I use?
Phrygian.
Phrygian. All right, Phrygian. That's 3. And we'll do second species. So that'll be 2 notes per bar. Phrygian is a good one. There we go. Anybody want to sing this with me? Can somebody sing the bottom line? Yeah, you got it. Okay, I'll sing the top line. There we go. Okay. Sorry, one more time. Okay. Oh wait, I thought
twice as fast, right?
No, but you're singing the bottom line, no?
Yes.
Oh, somebody else singing the top line? Oh yeah, we're going twice now. So I have 2 for each one of yours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. La, 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 yeah, nice. So again, my larger thesis here, or my larger point here, is that a lot of the music that we love is at least 50% rules. Okay? And this is, I think, a pretty amazing demonstration of this, because this is some nice music that just came out, and it's different every time. There's pretty much infinite possibilities here. They're not actually infinite, but there's many, many, many of them. So if I run this again, it'll come up with something different. And they're all come up with just through simple rules, and they all sound like music. This is people over centuries found out a way to get enough rules that it sounds like music. Okay, so now maybe we can get to Ba. Should we just sing this one real quick?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. La, 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 yeah. Peter Now let's get to Bach. Let's get to Bach, because Bach's, you know, he's the man. Bach was not only dealing with one set of rules in everything he wrote. He was dealing with multiple sets of rules in most things he wrote. So the first thing, of course, is that everything he wrote follows the rules of counterpoint. And that's a tall order to just respect those. People collect moments when he does incorrect counterpoint, and they do exist, but they're so few and far between that they're really the exception that proves the rule, which is that he was constantly following pretty much these same rules as what I was using to make the music we just heard. And that's one thing, okay? But also he loved imposing other rules on himself. So for instance, I put out a record in 2011 called Goldberg Variations. And it's a record where I play the Goldberg Variations, and after each one of them I improvise a variation of my own. And in the Goldberg Variations, every third variation is a canon. So canon, do you know what that means, canon? Yeah? Yeah? What does it mean? Yeah. What's that? Yeah, something that shoots. That's right. Those are the cannons. That's exactly right. You got a cannon, it shoots a cannonball. There's another type of canon in music. It's when somebody sings something and somebody else sings the same thing a little bit later. That's called a canon. So, for example, one person says, another person goes a little bit later. Okay, that's a canon. So, for example, let's see. Here we go. Okay, this is variation 3 of the Goldberg Variations. And for one thing, everything's respecting the rules of counterpoint. For another, everything is a beautiful melody. That's another rule that Bach imposes on himself. He never lets himself write something that doesn't have a meaning as a melody. It doesn't feel like a good melody feels like it has meaning. In the same way that if I say a sentence, it feels like it has meaning. It starts, it has punctuation, it has grammar. That's what a good melody is. Bach is always doing that. And in addition to that, the first voice is the red one, and you'll see that in the second bar, the second voice, which is the green one, does the exact same thing as the first one. Can you see that? And that continues all the way through. The two voices are identical, but one bar off. And there's a fourth rule that Bach is imposing on himself in the Goldberg Variations, which is that they all follow the same changes, as we say in jazz, the same harmonic structure. The harmonic structure goes. That's just the first half of the harmonic structure. And that's what you're seeing here. So let me play this for you. This is really remarkable because it sounds so obvious and easy, and it's so beautiful. And think of the hoops Bach is jumping through here. Okay, again, we have everything's a good melody, rules of counterpoint. We have the chord changes of the Goldberg Variations. Every variation in the Goldberg Variations follows these same chord changes. And we have, what was the other one? Canon. Role of canon. Okay? That's incredible for him to jump through all those hoops and still make it sound so easy and beautiful. So one question I asked myself was, can I improvise my own canon? And that's what I'm doing in the Goldberg variations. I realized improvising a canon at the unison, which means that the second voice repeats the first verbatim, exactly the same. That's actually, takes a little practice and it takes a lot of attention, but it's not that hard. So let me see if I can do something. So I'll use the chord changes to the Goldberg variation. So. I missed that. And then I discovered this instrument, the Yamaha disc clavier, and I asked myself, can I get the computer to do that work for me? You know, can I get the computer to do the canon for me, so I don't have to think about it so much? I mean, don't get me wrong, thinking about it is actually really fun, but let's look at. Thank you. Hi. Can you all hear me okay if I speak without a mic?
Yeah.
Medium?
Pretty loud.
Speak now, if, or you can speak even later if you can't hear me. You can always just say, grab the mic. All right, we'll try it without the mic because that's always more pleasant.
It's fine.
And if I need it, just let me know. Yeah, so I want to talk about something that's very dear to my heart, which is this idea. It's a very ancient idea, but it's something that maybe doesn't get talked about as often as I think it should, which is that music, of course, is very influenced by feelings and self-expression and intuition and spontaneity, but it's also probably just as much influenced by very hardcore kind of rational discoveries. So I like to think of music as kind of living at the intersection of the algorithmic and the spiritual. And I know the title of this discussion says "From Bach to Natural Machines," but really it starts before Bach. It starts a long time ago. It starts with Pythagoras, really. Yeah. Legend has it that Pythagoras discovered by walking by an anvil shop or a blacksmith shop where blacksmiths were hitting different sized anvils, that tones that relate to each other nicely, in other words, tones that are harmonious, that sound good together, have whole number ratios in terms of how they relate harmonically. So what does that mean? I'm not saying particularly well, but what it means is simply that if we have one tone, say we got like, and we have another tone that sounds good with it, so let's say a major third, like, Pythagoras discovered that in a time that the lower one is vibrating 4 times, the upper one is vibrating 5 times. So there's a whole number relationship between them, and those whole number relationships are why they sound good together. Okay, it gets a little more complicated when we get into equal temperament. But anyway, let's start with this idea that that harmony, when things are in harmony, they're related by whole number ratios. So how can we how can we really get a handle on this? Here's something I realized a while back. It's not a new discovery, but it's only recently that we've been able to hear it directly. So check this out. Oh, can we turn the reverb off? Yeah. I'm just going to show you guys what I'm doing here. This is something I've enjoyed doing since I was a kid. I love programming. It's really fun. Spent a lot less time at it than playing the piano, but I have done it quite a bit. So right here, I'm saying what my ratios are. So we're going to try something that's just 1 to 2, meaning the frequencies are related 1 to 2. And when you double a frequency, what do you get? Does anybody know? An octave. Okay, great. So here we go. Let's see. All right. So we have both of them happening every other time, and then in the middle we have one of them happening. So what's happening here is you're like, right? So now I'll speed it up. Okay, and this is a hard one to hear, but if you listen closely, you actually hear that we were hearing an octave and not just a single tone. Let's make it a little more obvious. We'll try a major, we'll try a perfect fifth. That'll be, perfect fifth is 3 to 2. So perfect fifth is, okay? So that, now the time that the top one's going twice, the bottom one's going 3 times, okay? So like, okay? So speed this up. Can you hear the 2 tones? Okay, that's a perfect fifth. And you can see that these things are the same whether we hear them as rhythm or as pitch. That's what I like to call pitch-rhythm duality. Let's go a little further. Let's try major third. Major third is 4 to 5. Okay, so you can see we're lining up every 4 of the top one and every 5 of the bottom. So this is a cool rhythm. It's one of my favorites. Like. 4 to 5, really great rhythm. I use it a lot in my compositions. So that's what it sounds like as rhythm. Now we speed it up. Remember, there's nothing happening here except that the events are getting closer together. I'm not adding any sound. It's just these little clicks that are getting closer together. that's a little bit mind-blowing, because to me it is. It's really, at the foundation of all the music we hear are these numerical relationships between tones. And this is, again, an idea that goes back 2,500 years. And it's really the foundation of everything we hear, especially Western harmony-wise. Okay, so how else can we look at these relationships? First of all, what happens if we add a tone here? We go 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6, those are three tones that relate to each other in 4 to 5 to 6. In other words, when the bottom one vibrates 4 times, in that same amount of time, the middle one vibrates 5 times, and the top one vibrates 6 times. Now, if you think of the harmonic series, for example, if I sing in that tone, and this is how trumpets work, how harmonics on the guitar work, in that tone is contained the harmonic series. So in ba, we also have ba, ba, which is the first harmonic, and then the second harmonic, which is the 5th up, and then the third harmonic, which is the octave again, and the 5th. Did I say third harmonic? Let me say this a little better. So, first partial, second partial, which is an octave up, which is twice as fast, third partial, which is the 5th above, which is, I'm really tired. 5th partial, that's the one. Let's try it. First partial, second partial, third partial, fourth partial, 5th partial, 6, 7, 8. Okay, can't go any higher than that. But then it goes like to the 9th. You get all the notes up there. And that's contained in every note that we play. There's no way of making a vibration in physics that doesn't also contain the multiples of that vibration. Okay? If something is vibrating at 200 hertz, 200 times a second, it's also inside there vibrating 400 times, which is twice as fast, also vibrating 600 times, which is 3 times as fast, etc. That's just a basic property of how vibrations happen. Okay? So, if I sing this harmonic series again, ba, 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 ba. But variation 24 is a canon, but a canon at the octave. Okay, so the first verse goes, and the second voice repeats the same thing, but an octave away. So it goes like this. So one of the interesting things that Bach does in this variation is that he switches the direction of the canon. In the first half of what you just heard, the canon was down. In other words, first voice plays something, second voice repeats an octave below. In the second half of it, first voice plays something, second voice repeats it an octave above. See if you can hear the switch. Apologize, my Bach is a little sloppy right now because I haven't played the Goldberg variations in a little while. I need more gigs with the Goldberg variations, but I'm doing them a lot later this year. So, but hopefully you'll have heard that right in the middle there, the the first voice was in this register, and then the second voice repeated an octave above. So this is where we get to natural machines. Okay, so what I'm playing is in the foreground, and what the computer's playing is in the background. What I'm playing is blue, what the computer's playing is yellow. I can switch the direction. And that's my super simple rule. But if it's good enough for Bach, if it's good enough to inspire Bach to write something that he would not have written if he hadn't imposed that rule on himself, it's good enough for me. And I was really interested to see what would happen, you know? So. So everything in natural machines is free improvisation. That's, I wanted to think about Bach coming to the Goldberg variations, and he has no preconceived ideas except that he has to follow the rules of counterpoint, he has to make nice melodies, he has to follow those harmonic changes, and he has to follow the rules of canon. Okay? In my case, the computer's taking care of the rules of canon. I have decided that I'm not going to play over existing chord changes, although actually the first track on the Natural Machines record, I play over the chord changes to All the Things You Are. So that can also work. But really, all that's left for me is self-expression. It's like, I want to make nice melodies. I want to play in good time, because this is such a rhythmic challenge, right? What do you do with that? And I'm doing one thing that Bach definitely did not do, which is, what happens if I multiply the delay before the rhythmic response, before the canonic response? So what happens if I multiply that by? Ooh, can we just cut that? Thank you. What happens if I multiply this by 2/3? Multiply again by the other way, by 3/2. Maybe again. I was thinking of the bembe clave. This is like a foundational Afro-Cuban rhythm. It goes ba da ba ga ba da ba ba da ba da ba da ba. The bembe clave, you can either feel like this, or you can feel it like this. 6/8 or in 3/4. The difference between those two feels is 3/2. Okay, because if I feel it in 6/8, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's 3 eighth notes in each one of those beats. But if I feel in 3/4, there's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. There's 2 eighth notes in each one of those beats. Okay, so the rhythmic relationship between those two tempos is 3-2. It's actually a perfect fifth. Remember about the perfect fifth? So what happens if I switch that as I'm playing? So let's see, so let's make it so there's 3 eighth notes in that. Maybe I'll play the bending clef. So instead of 3 eighth notes before the canon comes in, I'll have 2 eighth notes. They'll come in earlier. Okay, very subtle difference. But once I'm at the 2/3 level, once my response is 2 eighth notes, daka, 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 once it's there, nothing's keeping me then from moving to that place. So, and now that we're there, we can put 3 in that. So, again by 2/3. Outside of yourself. Because this is not music that I would have played if I hadn't imposed those rules on myself. I really wouldn't. Like you say, I'm going to play tennis, makes you do different things. All tennis is a set of rules, right? Makes you do different things than if you say, I'm going to play soccer. And that's very basic, but it really works in music too. And Bach was really the master of this. Let's look at variation 12 from the Goldberg variations. This is a really fascinating one because you see that first voice come in, the red voice. And the green voice, which is the second voice, comes in response. How would you describe how it's coming in response? It's inverted. Okay, if you're a musician, you know that word inverted, which is essentially a mirror image if the mirror is placed horizontally. Okay, so everything that goes up goes down instead. So instead of, we have same thing, but upside down. All right, let's hear this. imagine that? Not only do you have to follow all these rules, but this is a really tough rule. Everything that comes in, a bar later you got to do upside down. That's pretty out there. I mean, the one saving grace is that Bach allows himself to change the intervals of the melody according to the chord. So in other words, remember the canon of the unison, it was exactly the same notes in the next bar. But in this case, he allows himself to move them around a little bit. So for example, we see this, the beginning, that's a half step, right? But the response, that's a whole step. Okay? So he gives himself a tiny bit of leeway, but believe me, that still makes it extremely difficult. So this is one thing that I don't think I'm really capable of improvising that, but I wrote a computer program. This is easy as pie for a computer, right? Okay? Let me just improvise something with that. Just to be clear, I'll be doing like real full free improvisations with these algorithms at 7:45 tonight in the same space. I'm just giving you like tiny little tastes right now. You know what I find fascinating about this is that the minute you impose a rule on yourself like this, questions come up. And I think the big thing about humans is that we love problem solving. So one of the things that came up for me when I decided to write this algorithm that has inversion is what modes are palindromic? What musical scales are the same going up and going down? Well, it turns out Dorian is, so. Because I'm not allowing the computer to change the intervallic content of what I play. It's doing an exact chromatic inversion, okay? So since it's a chromatic inversion, if I want things to stay in the same scale, I got to play in a scale that's palindromic. That's the same upside down as it is right side up. Right? Otherwise, it'll just be something else. None of those are fitting, right? But, and also tritone away, because can't even explain, but anything that's a tritone away will also work. But also a whole bunch of exotic modes, like like Messiaen mode 3 based on F. So the sky's the limit, you know, and I've written a bunch of different kinds of algorithms, and that's what Natural Machines is. Natural Machines is nature and machine. It's me, I'm nature, computer and the piano, that's the machine. It's us meeting, and it's the machine proposing rules to me, the human. You know, finding a way to have fun playing tennis, or finding a way to have fun on Mars, where the gravity is lower than on Earth. And I just find that fascinating, and again, it's something that goes way, way back in history. So thanks so much for having me, and I hope to see you tonight. Yeah. Do we have time for a couple questions?
Yeah. There's nothing else happening in this room, so it's up to you.
Okay.
Totally up to you.
I'm just wondering what the mechanics are that are actually playing the piano.
Great question. This is a Yamaha disc clavier. It's a really wonderful instrument. It's the evolution of the player pianos that you see in like Western movies. You know, playing in the corner of the